It was December 1950. The Korean War was young, and so were the boys fighting it. The United Nations forces had pushed their way deep into North Korea. Victory seemed near. General MacArthur had promised the troops they'd be home for Christmas. But Christmas would come early for some, and not in the way they'd hope. You've heard of the Chosin Reservoir. You've heard of the bitter cold, the encirclement, the Chinese hordes pouring down from the mountains like a river of ghosts. But you may not have heard of Bloody George. Company G, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. G Company. They call them Bloody George because every time they went in, they bled. They were stationed along a ridge line called Fox Hill, one of the few lifelines between the surrounded Marines at Udam-ni and the base at Hagaru-ri. If that road fell, the entire 1st Marine Division would be cut off, trapped, frozen, and lost. And the Chinese wanted it bad. Bloody George was sent in to hold that line. There were 200 Marines, no tanks, little food, no winter gear, and they were about to face thousands. Now, here's the good part, the part you didn't know. They say war makes boys into men, but what it did for Bloody George was turn men into legends. Night fell, and the Chinese came, wave after wave, trumpets, bugles, drums, shouts in the snow, like something out of a nightmare. But Bloody George did not break. When ammo ran low, they scrounged from the dead. When the wounded fell, they were dragged to foxholes and kept firing. Private First Class Hector Caferata fought off a whole regiment in the dark, in his socks, with a frozen rifle. He picked off the enemy until his rifle jammed. Then he used grenades until his hands were too frozen to pull the pins. And still he fought, for hours, one man. He would receive the Medal of Honor, but he'd tell people he was just doing his job. By dawn, the snow was red, and Bloody George was still there. They had held the line. They would fight for days more, but the tide had turned. The road would stay open. The Marines would break out. At Chosin, 15,000 United Nations troops were surrounded by 120,000 Chinese soldiers. It should have been a massacre, but it wasn't because of companies like Bloody George. They say the temperature dropped to 30 below Fahrenheit. They say your skin froze to the metal on your rifle. They say some Marines carried their dead on stretchers for days because they refused to leave them behind. The story of Bloody George is more than just a tale of war. It is a testimony of courage, sacrifice, and perseverance against overwhelming odds. These young men, far from home and facing impossible conditions, chose to stand their ground when everything in them could have given way. They didn't see themselves as heroes, but as Marines simply doing their duty. Yet, in their steadfastness, they became legends. Life, too, brings battles that seem insurmountable. We may feel outnumbered, under-equipped, and weary from the cold realities of this world. But like those Marines at Fox Hill, we can choose to hold the line, not in our own strength, but in the strength that comes from God. Their story reminds us that endurance in the darkest night can lead to victory at dawn. As Christians, our battlefield may not be in the mountains of Korea, but in the trials of faith, hope, and love. And just as those Marines refused to abandon one another, so Christ promises never to abandon us. Even when the odds seem impossible, we are never truly surrounded, for the Lord goes before us and stands beside us. The Bible tells us, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. So when your soul feels under siege, remember Bloody George. Remember the one who holds the line with you. And take heart, dawn is coming. You and I call them heroes, but they just call themselves Marines. And now that you know the rest of this story, you have a story to tell.